So continuing to talk about cloning and using cloning in a non-destructive manner to make it look like you've erased parts of your image, I'm going to go over this example. This is kind of a straightforward example because I don't have a lot of perspective to worry about. The image itself, the building, already has a lot of lines and kind of mixed color splashes, so it's kind of easy to mix it in. This is what the original image looked like. There was a boarded up window that I cloned out. Going back to it, the only thing I did was make a selection of some of the little branches here, and I put those onto their own layer to help kind of reproduce what was there originally. But other than that, it was pretty straightforward. I can go through some of the steps again with you guys. I'm going to zoom in on this, create a new layer, take my clone stamp tool, make sure where it says sample it says all layers, and I'm going to pick a corner, Alt click to sample, and move over. I'm also going to make my brush a little bit larger, and I'm going to make my initial clone, and I'm not going to worry about this really being perfect for this particular image because there's so many other areas that I can go and sample from. I'll kind of treat this lower section that has the shadow and everything separately. So that's pretty fast. I immediately got rid of the majority of the building, but what I see is it's reproducing some noticeable patterns. So that's why I say do an initial clone selection, and then you can go and touch this up. So I might want to get rid of this board because it's so obviously a repetition of this one. So what I would do is perhaps take another board, like this one over here, and sample that and just reproduce it over here. Something that doesn't have as many noticeable patterns on it. And I might just kind of keep working, changing up the selection here. So I'm not going to go through all the steps, but that's what you would do. And then down here, you just want to really zoom in on this section, and I would start working on the lines for the lower panels, sampling those. Go back to my clone stamp tool. In this area, I would make my brush smaller. So I'm going to grab a corner and start placing that in. And you want to make your brush smaller because you want to keep a lot of those branches. And what I'm doing is just trying to reproduce what I think should be there. Maybe I have to go and just kind of keep taking new selections. Don't be afraid to just really treat this as like you're painting an image and just create something. And I might decide to preserve the branches or to go in and get them from the tree that's here. I could just go and clone in and add some branches. So if I want to just absolutely erase what is here, that's fine. And sometimes if you clone in something that you don't intend, that's also okay, because you can just think of this as a multi-step process. So I got a little bit of something there I don't particularly like, but no problem. I'll just sample down here and go and kind of clean that up right there. So now you can sort of see how this is building. I have a new board there. I've erased a little bit of branches, and I could go and add some more. So something like this is pretty straightforward, and it's really just a matter of spending time on it. And you know, big sections you might be able to just get away and doing with a really large brush, and then zoom in and work on the smaller sections if you have to go around. If I just wanted to work in the opposite way quickly, create another one, and I could also reproduce this boarded up window. So opposite way, Alt click and move over into a corner where I think it would actually look like it exists. And of course I'm going to get the problem that I'm adding in the little bit of branches, but that's okay. I'll just go in and touch those up later, and you can see how fast that can be. And this is completely non-destructive because it's on its own layer, and I'd want to bring in the shadow as well so it looks realistic. Just kind of tracing around. And now I'm just left with some choices of what to do about those branches. I can go in and just try to sample from the area that I have here. I probably might want to put this onto its own layer as well, so that way if I'm not happy with the edits, I could go in and just get rid of those edits but keep everything else. So I might just sample from the darker yellow area here and work on this in small sections, just sampling and cleaning up the little bit of branches. So the trick that I think just to keep in mind when you're starting out cloning, is constantly resample. If you don't resample and you're always just taking from the same source, you're going to end up with an image that has lots and lots of streaks in it. And you're going to see the repetition. It's just going to be like copying and pasting from your original image. You want to avoid that. So I would just think of this as resampling an image. Constantly going and resampling. And so this could be the process, but this will take a little bit of time. So I'm going to move over to the next video, or the next image, and what I wanted to talk about in this one is if you want to clone out something that has perspective. So let's say I have this image here of the bricks, and I want to get rid of the leaf. If you've noticed, the bricks that are up closer are larger than the bricks that are farther away. Those are smaller because there's a perspective here. So what I'm going to do is go up to Filter and choose Vanishing Point. And what this is going to do is I get a pop-up window, and it shows me my image, and I have some options over here. And the one I want to make sure I'm clicked on is the first one that says Create Plane Tool. This works kind of like the polygonal lasso tool. I'm going to draw a plane that shows accurately the perspective that is already in this image. And then Photoshop is going to be able to use measurements based on the perspective of the plane that I've drawn to be able to correct the perspective as I clone. So I'm clicking in the top corner of one of my bricks over here, and I'm going to drag over, keeping with the lines that are in this image. So I'm following the perspective in this image, clicking over here, and now I'm going to drag, I'm following, see I'm making a plane that represents the perspective in this image. I'm clicking and dragging down to here, and now I'm going to line this up. So you see how I'm following the line from my initial anchor point, and I'm dragging it down here, and I've now made a plane that traces out the perspective of my image. And now I'm going to take my Clone Stamp tool, and I'm going to sample. So I see where the leaf is, I have 2 pink bricks, and then I have sort of orange one. So I'm going to look for that elsewhere, and I see that's pretty much what I have here. 2 pink bricks, and then 2 orange ones. So this was going to be a great spot to sample. I'm going to alt-click at this lower corner, and I'm going to move it up, and you can see how I'm grabbing my sample with me, and I'm just going to line it up. I'll move it out so you can see how I have my sample, and I'm going to line it up so it fits right into the new area, and I'm just going to simply paint over, and as you can see, Photoshop does a really good job of fixing the perspective. So I cloned from over here, this was my source, and I cloned it in over here, and Photoshop followed the perspective for me. And now I'm going to click OK. And it did a really great job of fixing this for me. Okay, so a couple of more techniques and things to think about for your upcoming projects.